Well, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor. And today we're going to be talking about ancient history. I love ancient history. It's a fascinating subject, just tremendously interesting. And so today I'm going to be talking about ancient history, and if you want to get into ancient history, what is the best way to get into it? I became very interested in ancient history probably in the early 2000s, somewhere around then. I've always been kind of interested in it. But at one point I decided, you know what? I'm going to really look into this stuff. Because I knew from watching movies and things like Gladiator and movies like that, I knew a lot of this stuff wasn't historically accurate, but I didn't have the knowledge to know what was and what wasn't. And so I kind of really wanted to know. I wanted to know about that stuff. So I decided to really systematically get into ancient history. And it can be difficult. Ancient history can be a tricky subject. Here's the thing about ancient history. Everything we know about ancient history, it's a combination of archaeology and documentary evidence, like inscriptions and in some cases full histories, like the histories of Herodotus, for example. And all of this stuff is kind of spotty. We've certainly lost a lot more than we have. A lot more was written than we have. We only have a tiny piece of all of the histories, for example, and all the literature that was written in the ancient world. And the same can go for archaeology. A lot more has been lost than has survived. So we have to take what's left and try to get a picture of what happened. Sometimes we know pretty clearly what happened. Sometimes we can only take our best guess. We can only figure out, okay, what's likely to have happened, what's likely to not have happened, based on the evidence that we've got. So it can be a tricky subject. And that's one of the reasons you have to be careful when you're getting into it. You'll notice that the books I'm going to recommend you, not a lot of popular histories on this list. And you might say, man, I want some popular histories. I don't want to read that textbook stuff. Yeah, you do. If you want to learn the subject and really get the real accurate information, you kind of do actually. Here's the thing with popular histories. There are a lot of good popular histories out there. A lot of good books. I like a ton of them. I'll show you just a couple. You've got this one's a good one, SPQR by Mary Beard. This is kind of a cool Roman history. This is another one by Anthony Everett, which is about Athens, the rise of Athens by Anthony Everett. This is a cool popular history. This one's pretty good. And there are a lot of good popular histories out there. But the problem is, even with some of the better ones, and there are some that just are not that great, some of the information they give you isn't always completely accurate. Sometimes they will tell you things that aren't actually true. Here's an example. Let me go to a primary source for some of these histories, and this is kind of a notorious one. This is Suetonius and the 12 Caesars. Now this is great. This is an incredibly entertaining book. It just so happens that a lot of the information in here is probably not true. And that's the way it goes. Suetonius had a bit of an agenda, as a lot of writers do. And so not all of his, in fact, a lot of the things that he wrote can't really be trusted. There's some true things in here, and there are a lot of things that probably aren't. And our job is to try to figure out what is and what isn't. But what will happen with some popular histories, some of them, they'll take stories, because they're great stories in here. They'll take stories from like this or some other ancient histories that are kind of dubious, if not outright false, and they'll put it in their histories, and they just won't tell you how dubious they are. They won't tell you this story all the time and say, and by the way, this probably isn't true. So sometimes with popular histories I found on ancient history, you're going to get some of that. You're going to get some people asserting things as true when maybe they're not so true. When really they should just tell you straight up, this story's a little dubious. And that can be a problem with some popular history. So what you really want to do, if you're really interested in this subject and you want to know the real stuff, I would start with the most accurate information you can find. And you're not going to find those very often in popular histories. There are exceptions, but very often you won't get the most accurate information. The same can be true of documentaries. Like anything you see on a cable channel, like the History Channel or whatever, huge grains of salt when you watch those. Because they love to take shortcuts, and a lot of the shortcuts they take are telling you fun stories that might or might not be true, and not telling you that they might or might not be true. They do that all the time in documentaries, and it kind of drives me crazy. Same goes for any other place that you hear ancient history. Booktubers. There was a booktuber, a popular one, a good one, who was talking about Caesar. And he made the assertion that Caesar did not actually write any of his histories. Now that is true for the later books, and we know that, but at least as far as the Civil War and before that the Gallic War, all the actual facts that we have point to him actually writing those. There's no information, no factual information that we have to say that he didn't write those. So when this particular booktuber made this assertion that Caesar didn't write any of his histories, he wasn't talking to you from a place of fact. He was talking to you from a place of opinion. This guy, he didn't like Caesar personally, which is pretty understandable. Not a fan of Caesar, this guy. And so I think he just kind of made this assertion because that's what he thinks. But he didn't tell you, oh, by the way, I don't know this for sure, what I'm telling you. I'm just guessing. And that's a problem. So that happens a lot. So you have to be careful when you hear people, even people you like, even people that are smart, and they just tell you things about ancient history, about facts, double check, because they could be wrong. So I'm going to try to give you some books that'll give you the best information we have. Of course, like I said, a lot of this stuff is our best guess. But you want to start, I think, with the best information you can find. And when I talk about ancient history, I'm basically talking about the civilizations around the ancient Mediterranean, specifically Greece, Rome, Egypt, and the other civilizations of the ancient Near East, the Persians, for example. And when I first got interested in ancient history, I was just kind of interested in Greece, but then I found out that all of these civilizations, all of their histories are intertwined. So if you read history about one, they start talking about this other civilization because they're all involved in each other's business and they all traded with each other. And so I ended up being interested in all of them. And fortunately, the first book that I have to talk about is about all of them, or all the major ones at least, and this is Egypt, Greece, and Rome by Civilizations of the Ancient Mediterranean by Charles Freeman. This is a great place to start. This is the third edition. This can be kind of pricey. Some of these academic books can be kind of pricey. I read the second edition, which you can get cheaper. There are some changes that I don't know what the changes are because I just got this and fairly recently, and I haven't read it yet. I read the second edition, and the second edition was very informative, really good one-volume history. They do talk also about the civilizations of the ancient Near East in this book, which is really important because that is where civilization started. And just a ton of great information in this book. Really interesting. Charles Freeman is a good writer. He makes it interesting as he's writing it. Really, really like this book, and I think this is a fantastic place to start. If you get through this book, you're probably going to want to continue on with ancient history. And if you are, I would recommend digging a little deeper into these individual civilizations and just getting some introductory volumes on those civilizations on their own, so you get a little more information than what you get in here. You get a lot of information in here. He tackles all the big stuff. But then moving on to the individual histories, that's a great place to start. For the ancient Near East, there are a couple books I'll just throw up here. There are a few different choices. This one is Mark van de Meerup's A History of the Ancient Near East. This is the second edition. This is a Blackwell, I believe. Yeah, this is a Blackwell, so it can be kind of pricey. But I think they're on to a third, maybe even a fourth edition by now, so you might be able to get this a little bit cheaper. But this is an interesting book. It just has some good basic information on the civilizations of the ancient Near East. I also like, another book that I like an awful lot is Ancient Iraq, which is from Penguin by George, I think it's Georges Rowe. I never can pronounce names. That's the guy's name. And he writes a good book. And Ancient Iraq is about all these great civilizations, Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, the Assyrians, all those great Near East civilizations from the ancient Near East. Good stuff. Ancient Iraq. Really, really interesting. From there, I would move on to Egypt. And there are a couple good books for Egypt. One really good history because it has really solid information, and you'll find a lot of other histories referring to this one. This is the Oxford History of Ancient Egypt. This was edited by Ian Shaw. All the different sections have different scholars. Different scholars write all the different sections, and there's just a ton of great information in this book, and it has nice, pretty pictures too. This is a great book. A lot of good maps in here. A lot of good illustrations. The information is rock solid. The only thing with this book is that occasionally it can be as dry as the desert sand. That's the only problem I would say with this book. It could be a little drier than even other dry textbooky type books, but the information is great. I would supplement this though with another book, and this one actually is a popular history, so it's a rare addendum. And that would be The Rise and Fall of Ancient Egypt, because this is just such a great book. This is by Toby Wilkinson. Solid book. A lot of really good information in here. And it's a great supplement to that Oxford history. I might even read this one first and then move on to that one. But those are two great books about Egypt. You read those books, you'll have all the basic information you need to go forward for your information on ancient Egypt. Then I would move on to Greece, and the history that I would recommend for ancient Greece, the one volume history I'd recommend is this one. This is Ancient Greece, a political, social, and cultural history. And it's important to have all those things, a political, cultural, and social history. You want all of those in one history. And this one is actually really good. This was one of the first histories I read about Greece. I didn't read this edition. What is this? This is the 4th edition already. Oh my goodness, I just got this, and so I'm looking forward to reading it. But this is a great edition because it's got these fancy maps in the beginning and end, just a ton of great plates and illustrations and maps on the inside. The version I got was, I think, the 1st edition, and you can still get this one fairly cheap. I got this one for 20 bucks. This is the 1st edition that I got. Not quite as fancy, but it does have a bunch of great information in this book. So if you don't want to spring for the 4th edition, and this one I believe can be a little pricey, like I said, I got this for 20 bucks. And you can even get this one probably cheap on like eBay or whatever. I would imagine. I would hope. So yeah, this is the one I would check out for Greece. This has all the important information about the history of ancient Greece. It goes all the way up through Alexander the Great, and all the good stuff is in here. From there, I would move on to the Romans. And the Romans, they have this history, which is kind of the companion to that Greek history. This is the Romans from village to empire. This could be the best one-volume history on Rome that I've seen. I've read a few. This could be the best. This is in its 2nd edition. Again, I read it when it was in its 1st edition. I've looked through this, and it looks like there's some pretty good improvements on this one as well, including the fantastic maps, which are just invaluable. So yeah, what good one-volume history is the Romans. Both of those books were published by Oxford. Oxford just has some good histories, man. Got to give them that. So yeah, the Romans. From there, if you want to continue, and if you've read all these books, of course you're way into it by now and you're going to want to continue. From there, you could go to the popular histories. I wouldn't though. If it were me, I would move on to the primary sources. Get the sources that all of those popular historians are referring to, and one good place to start is Herodotus. You know I love Herodotus. And I would get the landmark edition, this edition, if you can get it. This is a fantastic edition, chock full of maps on every other page, and that's important when you're dealing with a 2,400-year-old civilization where the names have changed and the cities, their names have changed, and like other cities don't exist anymore. And you know, it's good to have a lot of maps to refer to. And this also gives you a pretty good timeline up at the top to tell you when the events are actually occurring, because Herodotus, of course, they don't have our calendar. So it's good to know exactly when the events he's referring to are. So I would get the landmark if you can get it. The landmark histories are fantastic. They do a Herodotus, a Thucydides, a Xenophon, an Arrian, I believe, and they've got just came out with a Caesar not too long ago. This is a great edition of Caesar. Caesar points out one of the things you've got to worry about in ancient histories, and that is bias. Caesar had a definite agenda when he wrote his books, so not all his information is completely trustworthy. That's why it's good to have a scholarly edition like this to help you figure out what is and is not true in what Caesar is saying. And again, all the information points to Caesar having written at least the first two sections of this, the Gallic War and the Civil War. Again, another great edition. For the other histories, you might have to go with a Penguin. Penguin is probably the way to go. Oxford has some good translations as well for the primary sources. This is a good edition of Polybius. I hear a rumor they're going to do a landmark of this, but so far it has not materialized. If you're going to do something that's just a translation, my recommendation to you, and if you can't get the landmarks, for example, I would invest in a good historical atlas. Penguin has these handy historical atlases. This is just a general one for ancient civilizations. This is a specific one to Greece, and this is a specific one for Rome. And they've got a bunch of maps so that if you're reading a text and you want to know about a city or an area, maybe something that's specific to a time, these are just handy to have. There are more expensive ones you can get, but these are the cheaper ones, and they're easy to carry around with you. Trust me, I know. So that, I think, if you read all of that stuff, when you get to the popular histories, you will and popular histories are great because it's always interesting to hear different people's opinions about things. And you will find information that you just, never thought of or didn't know. But you will have all the information to judge what's factual, what's not, what's likely, and what's not. So there's a real reason to go with the kind of scholarly, textbooky type of stuff first. And again, I know you're only going to do that if you're really interested. Heck, if you watched 18 minutes of this, maybe you're thinking about being interested because it's fascinating. I'll tell you just personally, studying ancient history, reading ancient history, like any history, if you're really into it, can be completely rewarding. I know when I traveled to Rome, I've traveled to Greece, and I've seen the historical places, I've seen the ruins, I've gone to the museums in Greece and Rome and seen all of these artifacts and things that you see in these books, and just seeing these things with your own eyes and knowing the historical information behind them, it's a transcendent experience. It's just like nothing else. Yeah. So I love ancient history, and if you are at all interested, I hope this video is helpful. Tomorrow, I think it's Sunday, so tomorrow I'll be back to doing a regular Sunday Penguin. So yeah, that's that. I hope it's been helpful to somebody. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time here at Stately Vaughan Manor. Bye, guys.